but I start to realize the connection as I like I said, get out of Miami, or if I host an event with Caribbean women, like I'll look around and I'll be like, wow, like yes, like all of you are my inspiration. Like this is what's in my art. The crazy earrings, the beautiful
Yes.
dresses, the lipstick, the energy, like it's so much energy. And I feel like that is what makes me feel grounded and joyful. And so it's found its way in my art.
Oh my gracious.
Even back in high school, Jennifer inspired more than
Y cambié la imagen por vender discos.
Come on, shake your body, baby, do that conga.
Well, thank you, Reyna Noriega, for joining Growing Up Latina.
Of
It's a
course.
pleasure having you. I know we've been talking about this moment for a while now.
Absolutely. But everything in due time.
Yes. So I want to start with the sala. Talk to me about your sala vibes. What was that like for you? What music were you listening to? What novela were you watching? Like, paint me that picture.
In what do you win? What sala? This sala?
Your sala growing up.
Oh, that's so I always think back to my abuela's Florida room, which is what she called it. I don't know if everyone calls it that, but her Florida room. That's where all of that was happening. The TV watching, the game playing. Um,
Who's that? Who's making an
oh,
appearance?
this is Pepper. She likes to be included
Hi,
in
Pepper.
any meetings and interviews. She's gonna post up and say, "I'm here."
Hi, Pepper. How are you? Welcome to Growing Up Latina, Pepper.
Exactly. And so and so, she used to sew, she used to do nails, she used to make little figurines. So she had all of these like creative pursuits that would go down in the Florida room, which is why I feel like when I was house shopping, I was really big on like I need a Florida room and it needs to be the place where people congregate. It needs to be the place where records are playing and games are being played and ideas are being had. More than anything else.
Yeah. So let me ask you, where did you grow up?
In Miami, been in
In,
Miami, born and raised. Yes,
okay.
everywhere from Miami Shores to Hialeah to Super South, Kendall, Homestead, all of the areas.
So I love it because you have an interesting background because you're kind of like really mixed, which I love. And you're mixed with all the islands, which I absolutely admire. What was those conversations like for you in terms of like representation and just like how everyone kind of showed up for their culture? Because you are mixed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it was definitely a journey, and a lot of my identity and the significance I didn't actually realize until I was older. I felt things like as a young child, I used to tell my abuela that I'm light black, or that like I used to say these things in terms of like I understood that I wasn't quite one or the other. But on all sides of my family, everyone is really mixed, so my abuela is very fair skinned Cuban, my abuelo is Afro Cuban. And I think those aspects I didn't realize until I was older. Like in my head, people were not accepting that I was Cuban because I wasn't light enough. And it wasn't even clicking to me that, like, my abuelo, full Cuban, is much darker than me. And that doesn't change, the fact that he doesn't speak English and that he's full born, raised, in Cuba. But kind of like the things that I saw made me feel, just not quite enough. But then I also learned that, like, when it comes to identity, everyone's on their own journey, reckoning with themselves. And so those projections that make you feel unworthy, like, it's no one else's job to validate your identity. Like, you have to be rooted in who you are and know your roots and accept it and all of those things. Like, it's no one else's job to open up the doors and say you're welcome. It would be nice, but it's not guaranteed.
Agreed. What was school like for you?
Lots of proving myself, lots of
Really?
if you're Spanish, say this, say that. Um,
Did
but
you feel like you had to prove yourself?
I did. I mean, I did,
Yeah.
especially middle school. I think elementary school, I didn't notice that I had a lot of privilege in elementary school, I would say, because most of the students were Latino. And so I kind of fit in the sense that like the culture and the things they were bringing for lunch, I understood. And so, I kind of like just fit in versus the students that were 100% full African American. And I didn't really notice that. I just, all of my friends were Latino. And then in middle school, that was when, kids get a little bit meaner. So that's when it's like, oh, well, if you're like Latino, if you're, well, they used to say Hispanic. If you're Hispanic, why this or why that? And that was the time when I was like making my parents buy me those shirts with the little boy with the flag. I did
Yeah.
them get me a Cuba shirt, and I was doing the most, making sure I knew all the lyrics to any Don Omar Aventura songs, and making sure it's like loud in my headphones. Like, yeah, I know, like this is um,
Yeah.
but as I got older too, I kind of realized that like it literally it didn't matter, like you're always gonna not be enough for someone. And again, that's a very personal journey. And you never want to give people the power to accept or deny you one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree. Did you ever feel during this journey that you were an outcast?
I would say never an outcast. I think even with the things that made me uncomfortable or I was not quite accepted, I've always also seen that I've been very privileged. Living in Miami and having any type of Caribbean background, you're gonna have community here. Like
Right?
every area of Miami is basically run by a certain culture. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of like the same thing in the spaces that I occupy. So I feel like that becomes more of a privilege than a drawback because I always have community somewhere, and I would kind of like hear people say things that I realized that I was also escaping some discrimination, some racism because I come from mixed cultures. So people
Hmm.
would, even my mom's, dark skinned Bahamian, and we would go to the mall and people would make friends with her and they'd be like, oh, no wonder you're so pretty. No wonder you're so nice. You're not American. And as a kid, that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I'm like, okay, she was just born there geographically. Like, if she was born here, she would be the same person. Like, she would be literally
Right.
the same person, same soul. So, why does that matter? So, I feel like having that cushion of like being more accepted, because I can choose to blend in with my Latino side or my Caribbean sides. I'm always kind of like aware that in the scale of things and the scale of privileges, I do have some.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you in terms of like representation and through art, right? Because first, I want to ask, like, where did this creativity spark? Like, at what age were you like, I got something here?
I definitely got back into art, high school, and then college. It was something that kept pulling me back. My dad was very creative and he tied his art to his passion, which was like sports and athleticism and things like that. So he was always able to like create art and have projects that centered on that. So I feel like as I started to dive into art, it also gave me the permission that I could tie my creativity with the things that I love and the things that I'm passionate about, whether it's beauty, fashion, representing women. And so I had worked so hard throughout school. I was definitely a nerd, and I was definitely like, I wasn't playing sports, I wasn't in clubs. It was like just focus on making straight A's and scoring the highest on this and that. When I rediscovered art, it was such a breath of fresh air of like, oh, like I can breathe, I can just express myself. Everything doesn't have to always be so stressed and so hard. And so I found a lot of healing in that. And I think I've always been chasing that feeling of like, how can I extract more healing from this practice, and then how can I give that to other people that are also suffering or stressed or unhappy with themselves? Like, what are the ways that I can offer that?
Were you ever misunderstood through the art?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of
How do you,
times by
yeah,
me.
how do you handle that? By yourself? Like
Yeah, like
you didn't understand it?
the comparison in my head of like, this is the level I should be at and this is what I should be creating. Um I think I was very fortunate. Like, once I found my style and it was centering women of color, I found my tribe, and it was like people were
Mm,
coming because the art represented them. And here and there I've had weird people, like I've had people make comments of like, why don't you draw white people, or why don't you, and I've always tried to give them grace, but also explain to them that like it's my job to portray my experiences, and you shouldn't want me to try to represent a culture I don't understand, just to
correct.
be inclusive, because that's not, when we're talking about like representation and inclusivity, it's not saying that, oh, we should get all of these non-black, all of these non-Latino artists to represent. It's saying no, like hire people with diverse perspectives so that we have true diversity and true representation.
And that was going to be my question before was, again, representation matters. And you do a very amazing job depicting us. Um, how much of it is drawn from your experience and how much of it is drawn from you just wanting to make change within the community?
I would say it's pretty much 50-50. It's my experience trying to pursue sustainable happiness, sustainable peace in my life, and like recognizing what those barriers are. And then as you start to like look within, you people mirror your experiences. So I may not have experience as a wife or a mother that is like overlooked and underappreciated, but I know enough women that look like me that are going through that I kind of understand the importance and the understanding of like being able to represent something that feels uplifting to like who they are at their core and their essence, and not glamorizing or glorifying the amount of like trauma and pressure that women have to endure to be seen as worthy.
Right. I want to talk about colors with you. When I look at your Instagram, it's so colorful. And I'm a person by default, I don't know why, I'm just always drawn to black. I'm not depressed, swear to God. It's just something that I don't know, I'm just comfortable in wearing black. But when I see you, you're just so vibrant. There's a lot of colors within your artwork, within just even your entire branding. So colors, let's talk about colors and what that represents for you and why it seems like you're very intentional about the colors that you choose.
Absolutely. So when I was the journey to like finding my style, it actually started with colors. I was drawing everything and I was all over the place, and I was trying to figure out how to like create something that was somewhat cohesive. I had given up hope of like finding a style because it just felt so like hard. Like nothing I was trying was sticking. I was always kind of changing a little bit. So I felt like the color, using like a set color palette, would help me to kind of stay and keep my work tied together in
Like
that
boxed
way.
in?
Yeah, and just make it feel
Okay.
more cohesive. And
Hmm.
so I wanted colors. I like bright colors, but I'm a very like middle middle person, in the sense that like I like vibrancy, I like energy, but I don't need it to be up here. I need it to be right here, so that on my lowest days I can get here, and on my higher days this is still a happy medium. I feel like having the expectation that everything is bright, happy all the time, it's not realistic, and it can become stressful. Like they talk about toxic positivity. So I'm not that person. I wanted colors that,
Wait, hold on, Rena. Can you just explain to me what is toxic positivity?
I feel like toxic positivity, people have different definitions of it, but to me it's when a person acts like the only valid emotion is positive emotions, and so you push away negative feelings, negative experiences, and you don't really get the chance to acknowledge them and appreciate them and learn from them, because you're in this mind state that like everything has to be great, everything is for a reason. And I think we all can like acknowledge the validity, but at the same time not dealing with our human reaction to things, it can be toxic because you're not dealing with them, you're not learning from them, you're just pushing them to the side.
Right. So we spoke about colors. How have your cultural roots influenced your artistic style and the themes that you explore in your work today?
I feel like intrinsically, I feel at home in the tropics, and I try to bring that out in my work. So it helped me, once I started traveling. Obviously, living in Miami, it's so easy to take that for granted because Miami is like the Caribbean, in America. But once I started traveling and going other places, I love traveling. Sagittarius. I would
You
be
a
on.
Sag?
I am a Sag.
Me too.
Oh wow! Look at us.
December 17th.
Stop lying.
When's your birthday?
December 17th.
Stop! You're lying.
I'm not
Are you serious?
crazy. That's crazy. I had a student when I was a teacher. I had a student that had the same birthday as me. I've never had anyone like the same exact birthday.
You're the 17th?
Yes.
Oh my God. You know I'm gonna text you every year now. Like, happy birthday.
No,
Oh
that's
my God.
so crazy.
But
Um
we're very adventurous, right?
yeah.
Like we're very like we are truth seekers.
Mhm.
I would say that's very true for Sagittarians. We're very adventurous. We like to travel, and the creativeness that we have in us is like we are in this exploration
Mhm.
type of energy. You know what I mean?
Right, right. So it ties in my quests for happiness and like how to squeeze the most joy out of life. I feel like it all ties together. And me. Every email I was like, "You sure you don't need me to come to New York?" I'll
Yeah, you
but
know, a girl. And if you do come to New York, we doing this again. Yes.
absolutely. But so yeah, so once I started to travel and I started to like leave the bubble of Miami, I would like the experience, I would like the feeling of being in a new place, but I'd be like, "Oh, something's wrong here." Like it's not enough. Like it's not enough palm trees. The air is too dry for me. Like we're too far from the ocean. People are wearing too much clothes. But little things like that would make me feel not at home. And then or the food, like the food was not very seasoned. Like people would say, "Oh, you have to try this restaurant," and I would go and I'd be like, "There's no seasoning on the food," and they would think it was completely normal, and I'm like, "Oh my god, take me back." I need
Yeah.
I need Havana Harry's, I need pollo, even pollo tropical, they don't have everywhere. And so
Oh,
yeah, so I definitely took those things for granted. Growing up in homes with so much color, growing up with matriarchs that were so vibrant and are walking around on a normal Tuesday wearing red lipstick and a fancy dress. But I start to realize the connection as I like I said, get out of Miami, or if I host an event with Caribbean women, like I'll look around and I'll be like, wow, like yes, like all of you are my inspiration. Like this is what's in my art. The crazy earrings, the beautiful
yes.
dresses, the lipstick, the energy, like it's so much energy. And I feel like that is what makes me feel grounded and joyful. And so it's found its way in my art.
But did your family understand like this ball of creativity, like growing up? And how did they respond to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got lucky since my dad was also an artist. It didn't come as a surprise, and my parents got to see that art can be fruitful, because that was the career that he fell back on when his athletic career ended. So I feel like I had that nice buffer of like, okay, so they know that, art can definitely support a family. So
Right.
they definitely supported that. I think I was more afraid more than anything, afraid of failing, afraid of like not being able to make them proud. But they supported me and they kind of like enjoyed seeing me blossom in that way.
Did they ever want you to be anything other than the amazingness that you are today?
Definitely a doctor or a lawyer.
Yes.
just because like I was so studious and my grades were so high that they couldn't understand me like not going like that far in college. So
Right.
I ended up, I wanted to study art in college. I ended up studying psychology, and obviously the journey took me back to art, even though I was afraid. And my younger sister is now in med school, so they do get a doctor out of it. So it works out. It works out for the
Okay.
best.
Now, talk to me about the amazing brands and the collaborations that you have worked with throughout your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky to be tapped by, some of the biggest companies that we know, to help with storytelling and with sharing my vision and providing representation. And so that, I mean, I didn't think I would have never guessed. Like some of the projects and some of the things that I've worked on, I would have never guessed that it would have happened and that it would have happened like so soon into my journey. I definitely had things on my vision board that were like very modest, just to, just to win a local contest or have my art in the local paper, for it to come out of the gate like cover of the New Yorker, or like work with
Amazing.
Apple or American Express, have a hairline with Goody in Walmart's. And so I'm definitely super grateful for all the opportunities I get to make people happy. They get to see the artwork, they get to say like, wow, like this looks like me, and it's on this large scale, in this place, whether it's Brookfield Place in New York or whether it's a Warby Parker, that like people that look like me are walking in and feeling welcome and feeling represented.
Let's talk about worth, self-worth, and how do you represent yourself in these spaces? Because you do get approached by these big, amazing companies, but you still have to stand on your own, right? And you still have to fight for what you believe is your worth and what is right. So how do you go into these deals and making sure that you are absolutely well compensated in these spaces with these big corporations?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely undervalued myself for a long time. I was just grateful for the opportunity to make ends meet with my art. Like I wasn't even thinking of thriving through art. It was just like, wow, I can pay a bill with this project this month. That's great. Like, so it took a few times, and it took a few good people that actually wanted me to know my worth and would actually tell me what the value was for me to start learning. And then as time went on, like I always recommend that people give themselves grace and don't expect to have it all figured out right at the beginning. Because it's definitely been a journey, and kind of like each project and each budget gives me information of what the value is for the future. And the way I feel once I've completed a project for a certain budget, whether I feel like I was overworked, whether I feel like I was abused, or whether I feel happy, like that tells me like, okay, this was a fair deal. Also seeing the success and being able to say to the next partnership, like, hey, so I already know my value because I brought in X amount of dollars with this company, with this partnership, X amount of dollars with this partnership. I've landed, these PR and press articles based on my partnership. And so it kind of gives you information to leverage in the future. I don't enjoy the negotiating process. I don't enjoy feeling like I have to convince people. I typically stay away from projects where they're like casting a wide net and they're like, oh, we think you're great for this. Send us your rates. We have like, we're vetting a few artists. Those typically never work out because it's like the client hasn't said like, we love this person, we love the way that she tells her story, we want to work with her. It's more so like, we need an illustrator to finish this by this date and like find someone within this budget, and they're trying to like make it stretch, and it's just never like a good synergy.
Yeah, it
So
doesn't feel good.
yeah, so I've kind of like learned those lessons over time.
Who do you want to work with?
Who do I want to work with? So definitely more hands on in the fashion and home space. Home decor has become very big to me, and like being able to create those same moods that are on canvas in a space. And the same with fashion, like you've seen the way that I dress and the way that I like to create looks, and just kind of like merging my artistic vision in that way would be very, very exciting. So for all of the my fave fashion brands, if they're listening,
I feel like we have already a few in mind just because I was like vetting your Instagram and I'm like, okay, I could see this. I could see this.
definitely, definitely, I have my loyal few that be shopping.
What do your fans, what are they saying? Like, who do they want you to work with?
Who? What do my fans? Well, they always want like products. So they're always saying like you should do a paint by number. You should do a not a journal. I do journals, but like you should do a planner or sometimes they give me really good ideas to do like different things like coloring books for kids or I've heard people have asked for like shower curtains and wallpaper and
Okay.
I always think that's really cool and I hope I look for things but I hope that the right people kind of like come my way and want to partner.
You just had an event, if I'm not mistaken. I saw it on Instagram. What was that event about?
I've had a few recently. So recently I've
Hmm.
got back into the swing of making time to do like community paint and sips and different things like that. So I've done a few. In February I did one with my friend's gallery in Miami, Grand Opening Gallery, and then I did one at the Soho House here. And then I did one, an outdoor one at like a ceramic studio, which was really nice. And when I was in New York last week, I did one at my friend's, her business headquarters, Unwrap. And so they created like mold planters, like plant pots basically. And everyone was able to kind of paint it in my style and in my pattern and with my colors. And it's
I
just
love
really
that.
nice because it's like one part of it is yes, you get to paint, you get to take something home, you get to practice your creativity. But I'm also able to have like one on one time with people that have supported me or have found like joy or healing in my work and have interesting stories to tell me. So it's just like a good opportunity to like refill and replenish and like recharge, fill my cup back up and give me the energy and like the confirmation that I'm doing what I need to be doing and to continue doing it.
What was one of your most emotional pieces that you created?
Ooh, emotional pieces. I feel like I keep those. Sometimes I'm like not able to share the ones that are emotional, but the ones that I've done, I do a series every now and then, like a more political series that says like my art looks like this because my reality looks like this. And I think the first one was in 2020, was it in 2020 or maybe a little bit earlier, for Breonna Taylor, um, Ahmaud Arbery, and ooh, why can't I remember his name? He set everything off for us. They kneeled on him and suffocated him.
Oh,
George Floyd. George Floyd. And so
okay.
it was kind of like that's that part half of it is what ended up becoming the New Yorker cover because it'll be like, the way we can slide carousels on Instagram. So like the first one will be the pretty, colorful, simplistic art that I would normally make and it attaches to a scene where like all of this crazy stuff is happening. So I did it a few times. I did it with I think this the not I don't think it's that recent because we have them it feels like every week now, but the school shooting in Texas that recently happened. I did it when they had like some border crisis. So it'll just be like positive image because I don't want people to think, like I said with the toxic positivity, like my artwork isn't bright and colorful because I'm ignoring the reality of what's happening. I'm trying to pump some positivity into like a bleak existence and situation so that my people have the energy to say we want to keep fighting. So yeah,
Right.
celebrate. We have the energy because we know what our
I
future
love
can look
that.
like if we come together, if we build community, if we believe in ourselves, if we know our worth. Like this is what we have to look forward to because of where we've come from, not in spite of it, not ignoring it.
What piece of art have you created that you are most proud of and why?
What piece of art? I would say recently I did an Art Basel exhibition at the Nautilus Hotel, and I created 12, more like 15 pieces of art for that exhibition. And so I have always wanted to create something that was cohesive and something that told a story. It was titled Miami Girl, and it kind of dealt with some of the complexities of identity and the way that my art is able to simplify it and make it more positive. So it was a lot of that, like a lot of talking about, like, body and like my personal image with my body, and things that you have to kind of like imagine or ignore to feel worthy. And I used a lot of different materials than I normally use. I did like life size 3D wood cutouts. I did some collage work. And so I was just really proud of all of the things that I was scared to try for so long. Like I was like, I'm just going to do it. And it all came out, the way that I imagined or better, and gave me the confidence to keep approaching my work in that way without fear and, without hesitation.
Now let's separate the art from Reyna Noriega, the person. So let's talk about how these two differentiate and how these two have similarities. How are you different from your art? And really, who are you personally, like on a personal level?
I would say sometimes, especially since, finding the style, like finding your art style for an artist, it's the never ending quest. It feels like the most important thing. And once I did that, at times it made me feel like I was pigeonholed. Is that the term? Like I was kind of stuck.
Hmm.
And there were other things and other complex feelings and emotions that I'm going through the process that don't that don't really fit the theme. Like sometimes I'm not in the headspace to create uplifting art for women of color. Sometimes as a woman of color, I'm just struggling. Sometimes I'm going through some emotional stuff. Sometimes I'm going through some heartbreak. Sometimes I'm just in a weird place. And I typically am able to use my writing as an outlet in those times, because it's able to kind of capture more of that. But I'm also kind of looking to, as I evolve as an artist, be able to tell more of that story, because I feel like that's important too.
I agree. And I think also too, and I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like sometimes the creativity serves as an outlet for whatever you may be going through. At least for me, I'm not an artist, but I feel like sometimes my creativity serves as that. That's how I'm able to kind of get some sort of release.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk about culture, food, music, and how that shapes everything for you. Because I think that's so important within our culture. Believe it or not, I have a whole like show that I'm trying to put together. And like those are the two main components that I'm like wanting to incorporate is the food and just like the music, the culture of it all.
Mm. There's so much to say. Where do we begin?
Where do you want to begin? Let's start with food. I love food. Let's start with food.
Same. I'm so lucky. I mean, my mom doesn't cook a lot of Bahamian food, but her mom was Jamaican, so she makes a lot of Jamaican food and Cuban food. She's learned
Do
from
you
my
cook?
I cook. I cook, but like I'm so spoiled with, my grandma's food I got to have when I was young, my abuela's food, she still cooks, and my mom's food. Like I never want to compete with that. So I haven't learned too many dishes, like traditional dishes. I can make like a pretty good stew beef, which is like a Jamaican dish. I can make picadillo. Um but there's certain things that like arroz con pollo I've never attempted. I can make congri. I can make obviously rice and beans. Um most of the rice dishes, not my favorite though. My favorite is like arroz imperial. And also a lot of restaurants don't serve that, and that always makes me a little bit upset. But yeah, my dad's always like grilling churrasco, and so I'm spoiled in that regard, and I'm not ready to like compete, because I feel like there's times where I put hours into a dish and I'd be like, this doesn't taste like my mom.
It's not hitting. It ain't hitting, right?
It's missing something. Um,
Mm.
but I mean, it's important. I mean, I should learn while they're here to teach me. My abuela has taught me how to make her flan probably like 3 times, and she has a cookbook. She has a cookbook that I'm definitely gonna hold on to, which
I
is
feel like
really
you talk a lot about her throughout this interview. What what does she really mean to you in terms of like just like that mother figure in your life, and talk a little bit about that? Because I listen, grandparents are everything, at least for me. So
yeah,
what was that
yeah.
like for you?
No, I mean she's such a spirited woman. So she's always been so fun to watch and so interesting. Like there's so many layers. And I think I was lucky enough to grow up and in their home like to see the things that I saw and like the things I saw her make. I don't know that even like my siblings that came up after me if they knew that side of her, because she's just like a rocket. She's she's very creative. Now she kind of like makes jewelry to keep the arthritis at bay. She likes making jewelry. She's always loved doing stuff with her hands. I mentioned earlier she used to do a lot of like ceramics. She would make these tiny figurines and these scenes like incredible and always collecting
Love it.
things. So definitely normalize creativity, I feel like in the household. And I don't know, sometimes it's like you reflect on things and it's like, oh, that's where that came from. But I don't even know if she knows that she kind of like sparked that.
What are
So
some of the conversations that you have with her in terms of like the art and the creativity? Because it seems like you are around her and you kind of draw inspiration from her, right?
yeah, I mean, I try to make it a point whenever I can, whenever I'm doing a project and I can incorporate my grandparents, I try to bring them. And I always try to bring them like the stuff that I make that has my name on it and, kind of show them that, like, look, like, this is where your sacrifices have come to. Like, this is where your name now spans because of the decisions that you made and because of the sacrifices that you made. So, I've done projects and campaigns with them. I've done interviews on Telemundo with them. And it's also interesting to see like the shyer side. Like once I put them in the spotlight, I would never have imagined that my abuela is shy until, I got her in front of a production crew. So those are really cool things. Like I feel like incorporating them and like showing them where their journey, because I'm sure there's moments where it's like, what was this all for, and like on the days that are not so good. I hope that they know that I know, that it's because of their sacrifice, and I don't think that I just like poof popped onto this planet and I'm who I am with no support.
That's so beautiful. Do they fully understand the scope of that? Like when you bring them to like in front of an entire production team, do they fully understand the scope of that and what it means?
I don't know. I hope so. I mean, at this point, I think they think I'm actually bigger. Like if they see something that I post on Instagram, like a campaign, they'll be like, "We saw you on TV," and I'll be like, "I was on TV," and we'll talk about it. And they'll be like, "Yeah, you were doing this, you were wearing this," and I'll be like, "Oh, that sounds like a reel that I posted on Instagram," but I'll just let them. I'll let them have it.
Right. Like you right. You right. That was for the masses.
I
Let
guess
me
I was
ask
on.
you, what what advice would you give to other upcoming and aspiring artists out there?
I think the most important work that you will do is internal. It is, figuring out what is the story that you want to tell. What are the areas that you yourself need healing? And, how do you go about that healing in a sustainable way? I think, like, from what I observe in the world now, it's not that difficult to create a platform. It's not that difficult to, create things and share things. It's actually really easy. But what's hard is to create like a lasting legacy of something that is built on a strong foundation and is not centered around like just going viral and engagement and all of these things and catching people's attention. I feel like those are very like low vibrational aspirations, is to be popular when you can be truly influential in a way that makes people's lives and experiences in this world better. um
Right.
Everything will flow
Now,
from there. Like your authenticity, I feel like people feel it and they'll be drawn to it, and you start with community. So it's been a process. It's been a process of learning how to appreciate the small projects. It's been a process of learning how to manage a small community before it grows to the point where you can't even keep up with it.
but how do you build it? Like,
I,
how would someone who is trying? Because the thing with you is like you have the community backing you. So how do you build that community?
I built it by, I feel like being authentic. Nothing I have tried. I always get super annoyed when people are online telling you like what to do. Like use this trending sound if you want to go viral. I don't think that is not like a science, right? And that's not a science to create actual human beings that feel a connection to you and feel seen by you. And if that's not what you value, like everyone's going to be different. I think that that is my purpose. I think that that is my purpose, to help people find their light, to help people feel better, to help give people hope. And so for me, it was very important to understand that. Like when I started posting art, it wasn't popular. It wasn't getting a lot of likes. People didn't understand it. People I knew for years didn't understand like that I was an artist or that I was trying to be an artist full time. Like I would, like years into my career, I was getting, messages like, "Oh, I didn't know that you make art. I didn't know that you make logos," even though I was posting, and it was getting a few likes and whatever. And I have I have found the energy to always keep going by appreciating every individual that interacts with my work and that feels compelled to share with me what it means. And I feel like that has to be enough. The one person telling you that your art moves them, even if you've lost 500 followers that day, like that has to be enough to give you the will to keep going, to create something that's meaningful, because it's not an overnight thing. Like I truly feel like even when it comes to people going viral, it happens when it's meant to, after you've been putting in work. So it might feel like, wow, this person's so lucky. This one thing they posted took off, but they were probably posting like hundreds and hundreds of videos that were flopping and flopping and flopping, and they had to continuously find the will to keep going. And I feel like once you're in alignment and you know your message and your mission, good things come together and conspire to make you um, be the person you're meant to be.
I always say that. I always say it doesn't happen overnight, but when it happens overnight. Because
Hmm.
it's that one moment that just like takes you off, but it's that years of work that you put in to make that one moment that may have seemed like an overnight success really happen. Um, for people that are wanting to turn this into a business, because you are an entrepreneur, what are some of the tips and advice that you can give to those people and how to set those boundaries and just to kind of stand up on their worth, right? And just to make sure like their price is their price. Like, what are some of the tips that you can give those aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think a few things that I would say is that first, get away from the mindset that like artists have to starve, and realize that there are so many jobs for artists in every single industry. Any single agency, any company, they have an art team and an art director and a creative director and someone in charge of graphic design and all of this. So there's millions of ways to make money as an artist, whether you're an illustrator, whether you're doing editorial, whether you're creating products, whether you're creating packaging for products. There's so many avenues that you can take. And it's up to you to figure out like what you're the most inspired to do and what actually like fills you up. So I would say that that is the first thing. And then I would say that y- you have to first like, there's going to be, it's a sliding scale, and it depends on the company, it depends on the project. Like I've seen everything you can name, but I feel like doing kind of like a rough calculation of what you need to survive, right? That's how I started, just survival. So to pay for the iPad that I need to draw and the internet I need to send emails to these people that want to work with me and to have a roof over my head? What do I need to make to sustain that? And how many people, without losing my mind, can I work with a month to make that? And kind of understanding, like, okay, so this is what I need to be bringing in, and these are the projects that I can book for that, and whatever. And over time, like, it's supply and demand. So if you're getting so many inquiries for that price range that you're in, it's time to raise your price, right? So
That's
that
right.
you have two projects. Well, two, what, how would I say that? Not two projects for the price of one. You would have like one project that would cover what maybe two projects in the past would have
Right.
covered. And it's a process, and you have to talk to people and ask people. A few tidbits I can say: there are books on pricing. I think the Artists Guild, it's something the Artist Handbook Guild of Pricing, they have help with like agreements and stuff. But I also feel like that book was ahead or behind where we are now, because now we're in this social media age where people are using your graphics for marketing
That's
and
right.
to sell products. And I think that as artists, we have to understand that if someone is hiring you blindly, like, your name is not attached to anything, they just want a surface pattern to slap on something and no one's going to know your name, that's a different story. But when a company is coming to you and saying, we want to collaborate with you, we want to take what you stand for, your vision, and the trust that you have with your community, and we want to merge it with ours, and we want to send email blasts, and we want you to do interviews, and we want to put your face on this thing, and we want to say, hey, Reyna stands for the same thing we stand for. There's a price for that, right? And whether they're
Right.
using that likeness for 3 months or 6 months or 2 years, or they expect to own your artwork and do whatever they want with it, those are the questions and the light bulbs that have to turn on, that tell you, like, okay, like, this is maybe a $600 budget, and I'm never going to see this again, they're never going to see me again. Or this is a $10,000 budget because they expect me to be here and say that I agree with them. And we've seen the things that, like, companies can kind of get in trouble for whether they're funding certain things or not standing with certain things. And when they go down, and when people are like, oh, look how this company has treated these people, your name is with them now because you've co-signed them and you've said, hey, we're in alignment. So it's
Yeah.
very important to understand the value of that, because any company that partners with me because they want a diverse voice, what they're asking me to do is tell my audience of Black and brown women that love and trust me that, hey, this company is on our side, and that has value.
What do you usually say no to, like without even thinking? What is something that you would say no to? What is a bad deal for you?
um
And what
I
is a
feel,
non-negotiable for you as well?
well, I would say definitely, like, companies that don't stand for things that I stand for. So companies that I don't feel are making a positive change. And that can be complicated, because you have companies that create great change because they create technology and access to things while still creating, like, so much damage to the planet and doing all
Yeah.
these things. But I think I'm constantly having to weigh those things, like a fast fashion brand that is just centered on consumption and creating waste. It's a lot easier to say no to that versus, like, a company that's providing technology that children in schools are using to learn, but at the same time they have some, like, less than ideal practices in you know getting these technologies or whatever. It becomes kind of like, okay, you have to kind of, like, make decisions like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have an answer, a fully concrete answer yet. I feel like every yes and every no, like, it depends on a lot of factors. um Depends on the campaign. It depends on the campaign feels if the campaign feels fair, and if it feels well thought out, or if someone last minute was like, hey, it's Hispanic Heritage Month and Latino Heritage Month, and we need you to turn this in next week so we can post on our social media. I usually say no to those projects. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you won't see me post too many things day of, like, this year I want to celebrate Pride
Yeah.
or Black History Month with this. It's usually like a longer project that is also going to be on shelves longer because they're really investing in the community and it's not just like a photo op for one day or 1 month.
That's what I always say. I'm always preaching like not every dollar is a good dollar. And like if it's not spiritually aligned with like what I feel good about, I would never take it. You
Hmm.
know, so I agree with you on that. Like it has to be something that's like forward movement, something that you really can put your whole faith and belief in. Usually when things come last minute, I'm like, am I a filler? Like, why did you just call me for this? Like, I
Yeah.
am not a
Who
filler for this.
dropped
Exactly. I want to get into some rapid fire questions if you don't mind. Um,
out?
are you
Sure.
ready?
I'm
Okay.
ready.
Tell me you're Latina. Tell me you're Latina without telling me you're Latina.
Ooh. Vicks for everything.
Yes. What's one thing you need in the morning?
Music.
What kind of
I
music?
got I gotta be more rapid. I gotta be more rapid.
More. Okay. What does it mean to you to be Latina?
Ooh. I think vibrant is the word that I would say.
Okay. What is this chapter of your life called?
Obedience.
I like that. If you had an opportunity to have the Last Supper with three Latinas, dead or alive, who would they
Mm.
be?
Immediately my brain said Celia Cruz. Um,
Everybody says that, by the way. We love Celia Cruz. We love her.
oh my gosh. Not let me see. I also love Sama
Yes.
and I feel like I feel like Tego would bring some flavor and some jokes.
Okay. I like that. What is something you would want to work on that you haven't already?
Ooh, a clothing line.
Who? What kind of clothing line? Like in
Ooh, like
collaboration or
me.
your own?
I feel like
I gotta get deep.
my
Your
own
own.
eventually, definitely.
Okay.
It would be kind of like it would be something you would wear, you know, like all of the women that
Period.
are standing in their power. It would make you feel beautiful and elevated and all of the things.
Love that. Finish this sentence. Growing up Latina is.
Being the best of everything. The best
Yes.
dancer and cook and just bringing I feel like setting the trends.
Love that. Thank you so much, Reyna Noriega, coming on Growing Up Latina. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was incredible. This was so much fun.